Time to end this suffering. I need a minute to myself. So I drift away. You will never get to me. What can be done, I'll do myself. So I slip away. What's around, what's wrong? What's losing control? What's around, what's wrong? No one about to break. What's around, what's wrong? What's losing control? What's around, what's wrong? No one about to break. Face the burn, no escape, can you step to this? Face the burn, no escape, can you step to this? Face the pain, face the pain, ripping me into pieces. Face the burn, no escape, can you step to this? Face the burn, no escape, can you step to this? Face the pain, ripping me into pieces. Face the spirit.
Hi again, everybody, and welcome to Facing the Pain. Tonight, we review UFC Fight Night 106, Belfort Gastelum. Very, very, very quickly preview Fight Night 107, Manua versus Anderson. And talk the MMA Tournament of Bad, which is probably the thing we're looking forward to the most. With me, as always, my broadcast colleague, Sam Mercady.
Wait, Manua versus Anderson?
Yes, Jimmy Manua versus Corey Anderson. Not Anderson.
Oh, okay. I got semi-excited for a second.
We talked about this last week, so good job keeping up.
I don't pay attention to what you say, dude.
Yeah, the Thunder game was on last week, so I don't know if I paid attention to what I said.
Yeah, they were playing the Spurs, and we were recording at the same time.
Well, they're about to play the Nets, and we're going to be recording.
Oh, when is the game? And how long officially is the
1
game?
hour. We should be done.
Okay, well, we'll wrap this up before then, or maybe we'll miss out on the first few minutes. We'll be fine.
It's the Nets. We should have to watch this game.
But unfortunately, we do.
Fight Night 106 from Brazil. We talked about it last week. This was a good card on paper with people we've heard of, which is very rare for Fight Night cards nowadays. It's rare for pay-per-view cards, I feel like, as well. The main event was Vitor Belfort against Kevin Gastelum. You picked Vitor Belfort out of principle, which was stupid. And Kelvin Gastelum...
I don't think I said out of principle. Hold on. I have to interrupt you right away before you tarnish my reputation. I pick Anderson Silva on principle. I pick Shogun on principle because he's one of my favorite fighters ever. I do not pick Vitor Belfort on principle because there's no principle to ever pick Vitor Belfort, who's probably the flakiest fighter of all time, who happens to be 39 now. I don't think Vitor is as flaky as Overeem, in fairness, but maybe second flakiest fighter of all time. So I definitely did not say principle. Unless I was referring to him licking his wife's toes, then maybe I said that.
Yes.
Because now I remembered we actually did have that conversation. Okay, so it's not combat sport related principle, but rather foot fetish related principle, which is even worse. So this interruption was useless. Continue.
He got knocked out. He got knocked down a couple of times, and I'm not sure he landed a single punch in this fight. Vitor didn't look good. Gastelum just easily picked him apart and did whatever he wanted to with him and, finished him. It's Vitor's third straight TKO loss. He's 39. He does have one fight left on his contract. I don't know if Gastelum is good, or if he just beat a 39-year-old Vitor Belfort who shouldn't be in the cage. And then, of course, Gastelum complained about Bisping and George St. Pierre while calling out Anderson Silva.
Okay, before we get to the fight itself, we'll start with the bottom, with what you just... we'll start with the end. You brought up Vitor, you brought up Gastelum complaining about about St. Pierre taking on Bisping and complaining about the kind of fighters Michael Bisping has been fighting.
Yes, Michael Bisping has an obligation to defend his title.
Dude, you can't throw me off like that right away. Don't start. Don't start. Just don't start. Fuck you, dude. Nobody gets what we're talking about. Jesus.
Bisping is competing in a middleweight championship bout fight, and it's a fight for Bisping's middleweight title.
Also true. I can't complain. The thing with all of what you just said is that it is factually correct. Nobody can dispute that.
I know. That's why I said it.
All right. So, Calvin Gastelum's last 3 wins have come against Johnny Hendricks before we officially knew he was washed up, so I'll tolerate that. But more importantly...
a welterweight Johnny Hendricks that missed weight.
Right. But that's okay matchmaking, so I'm not saying that doesn't make him a hypocrite. However, beating Tim Kennedy, who's like 40 and was never that good anyway,
and retired after that fight.
Well, yeah, in his last fight ever. Vitor Belfort, who turns 40 in 3 weeks, and then calling out Anderson Silva, who's well over 40, and then complaining about the kind of matchmaking Bisping has been receiving is absolutely ridiculous.
Tim Kennedy is 36, 37. Let's not sell him short.
Yeah, but he's also Tim Kennedy.
He's not a pussy. I know that much.
That's right. That's right. The other thing, for those that don't get the reference, you will later on in this podcast. You know, we're bringing that up.
Well, it's in the tournament, so...
It is in the tournament.
Yeah.
So when you beat Vito, hey, you did a good job. Look, we always talk about this. When you get favorable matchmaking, at least make it look easy. Calvin Gastelum did, and we'll talk about that in a second. But then he called out Anderson Silva, which is also fine. But look, the fighter Bisping is about to fight is much younger than the fighter you just called out. Think about that. Much younger. Who's a better fighter now, George St. Pierre or Anderson Silva? Now, I know there's no way to actually answer that because we don't know what fighter George St. Pierre is now. But
yeah, I don't know what kind of fighter George St. Pierre is.
I actually think George St. Pierre.
I think Anderson's a better fighter now.
As he's always been, but okay. I'm still going with George St. Pierre.
I mean, that's fair.
Anyway.
I mean, I only say Anderson because I've seen Anderson recently, and it's not like he was good, but he won.
I only say St. Pierre because I've seen Anderson recently. So
I don't know what to expect from George St. Pierre. Like, the guy is...
And I know what to expect for Anderson, so I'll go with the uncertainty. Because there is that 20% chance that he'll be decent.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. Either way, neither guy is great right now.
No, and I agree that in terms of on based on merit, arguably Michael Bisping shouldn't be fighting George St. Pierre.
Arguably, you say.
Okay. This is awful. I apologize to everybody. But okay, so based on merit, of course, it's ridiculous for George St. Pierre to be getting a title shot. But then when you call out Anderson Silva, all the while promoting the idea that you should be a contender, that is my issue. If he was just calling out Anderson Silva in vacuum, that is perfectly fine. Hey, you call out whoever you want. But if you want to claim that you should be a contender at middleweight, then don't call out the washed-up 43-year-old fighter and then call out the champ for the kind of fighters he's been fighting and he's about to fight. So with that out of the way, as far as the fight itself, look, there's a problem with Vitor Belfort even when he was good or young, or younger. probably is a better
He's
way
still
to put
young.
it. Because
He's
I feel
a
like
young lion.
He's a young dinosaur. He's an old lion, young dinosaur. Don't confuse the two.
Sorry.
I forgot about that when he said that.
Yeah.
Dude, that old lion, young dinosaur thing was like 4 years ago.
That was the same time that Create Your Own... That was after Create Your Own Atmosphere, actually, I think.
Yeah, but that was at least 2012, right?
It was before the John Jones
Or
fight.
at most.
Yeah, it was before the John Jones fight.
John Jones fight was 2012. So yeah, we're talking 2012. So if he was an old lion then, I guess now he's just an old dinosaur because he was an old lion, young dinosaur then. So the young dinosaur is no longer old.
I think he's extinct.
He's an adult.
I don't know.
He's an adult dinosaur about to be extinct.
I think he's just extinct.
So the problem with Vitor Belfort, even in his younger days, is he never quite had an identity for too long. He had phases. So when he first burst onto the scene and was fighting the Cabbages of the world,
Did he fight Cabbage? He fought Tank Abbott.
Tank Abbott, not Cabbage. Wrong can. I'm sorry. So
Cabbage is a vegetable, I think, not a can.
What? You mean in a vegetable state, or you're just making a joke?
No, cabbage is a vegetable. It's a joke. I don't know what Cabbage Correa is up to.
Because I laughed. So then I realized, oh shit, if he's actually a vegetable right now in real life, that's like really inappropriate for me to laugh. I'm just making sure. That would arguably be inappropriate for me to laugh at. So Vitor, he just went through phases. He had the phases where he threw like 16 strikes in 1 second, such as the Vanderlei Silva knockout, which still has not... basically, honestly, it hasn't gotten old. That knockout has really aged well. Him just blitzing Vanderlei and that flurry against the cage. Then he went through Wrestler Vitor, which was absolutely... that phase was the best. That phase...
Everybody go watch Vitor Belfort against James Zikic from Cage Rage.
No, don't. I remember that fight in Cage Rage. You know when I watched it for the first time to preview the Anderson fight, I was so excited for that fight. I wanted like an extensive breakdown, and I watched that fight and I was like, Jesus Christ. Everybody don't listen to this guy ever, but especially right now, don't listen to this guy.
That was classic Vitor, vintage Vitor right there.
Vintage Vitor. Best pure striker in MMA history, showing his wrestling chops. So, and of course, there's a phase where the losing phases, which he went through many of them, where he just either wilts because somebody puts the pressure on, he either wilts because somebody out-wrestles him, he has these boring decisions. And then he went through the more technical Vitor phase, like late affliction, early second UFC tenure, where he was more economic with his with the sheer volume of his strikes. But that's when he was a bit more mature with his striking, and he was just more timing reliant. And still, the moment he hit you, he would put you out. And then Anderson printed his foot on his face, and then Vitor went through his best phase ever, his TRT phase. In other words,
his
being voided out of his mind. Yeah, that phase was something else, honestly. That phase was the best.
The knockouts of Bisping, Rockhold, and Henderson, like 3 straight knockouts.
Back.
Yeah. Like it's tough to find 3 straight knockouts
over quality fighters.
Quality fighters that are that highlight reel producing.
In a row and in such similar fashion.
That's what I mean.
Dude, it's absolutely stunning. USADA has ruined the world. So that Vitor, that's something else. And now it's the old Vitor. The reason I bring all of that up is not just to kill airtime, but also for a very specific reason. As you grow older as a fighter and you lose much of your quickness, which was such a huge part of Vitor's game, you lose everything else, your physicality, your explosiveness. It's hard to maintain the style you once had. It doesn't help when you never clearly had a style. Like, Vitor was never always super aggressive. Again, it just went through phases. His wrestling phase was never good enough for it to be anything maintainable, or sustainable, rather, long term. So it's not like now at 39 that he's lost so much of his quickness, he can go like, oh, I should just wrestle these guys for 3 rounds or 5. He can't do that. So you're a fighter basically with no identity. You don't have something to fall back on. That's not unlike many other fighters, except those fighters struggle because they can't fight the same way they used to. Case in point, Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva had a clear style. He never had, I wouldn't say he never had power. He always had great power, but not power in the, like, I don't know, the Robbie Lawler type of power. It was more about technique, precision, timing. And as he got older and lost much of his reflexes, much of his accuracy, speed, quickness, all of the above, he still tries to fight the same way, but it's not nearly as effective. You see it with other fighters. Like take Vitor Silva, for example. He's okay. Obviously, he's not as wild and as aggressive as he was in Pride in his later days. But, he can still roll the dice and basically bait his opponent into a brawl. And he goes like, okay, I don't have the chin, I don't have the recovery that I used to. But hey, like, that's my best chance. And that's how he beat Brian Stan. You remember that fight? It was like, fuck it.
Great.
Like, it was fantastic. But from Vitor's perspective, it was actually smart. Like, you could go like, oh, it's not smart for a fighter. I don't know how old Vitor was at the time. But basically a semi-washed-up fighter at the time, now he's just beyond washed up, to engage in this sort of fight. But honestly, what else is he supposed to do? Fight technical? The guy hadn't fought technical his whole career, and his boxing technique and defense is absolutely trash. So what can he do? He relies on experience. He picks his spots, triggering a brawl at the right moment, and he hopes for the best. And he won that way. Vitor can't do that because that was never quite his style. He was never that reckless. And he can't fully fight technical because he was never that sort of like super technical Anderson Silva guy. So he's like in this middle ground where he can, to me, the best way Vitor fights is sort of like the timing-based Vitor, where when he leaps in, he's almost not quite Lyoto Machida, but whenever he leaps in, his timing and that left hand are absolutely devastating. When he times his strikes, well, there's all in those situations, he's one of the best. Like, there's very, very few can do what he does in those situations, when he's comfortable, when he's confident, when you're not putting the pressure on him and you give him the time to do that. He can absolutely ruin you. Few fighters have this sort of power, and few fighters have this sort of killer instinct. If he hurts you, you're done. So, because he can't do that anymore, you see a fight like this one where he's just throwing Kenny Florian. Was Kenny Florian on commentary? That
No.
sounded like him.
Well,
Who was the guy next to John Anik?
I have no clue. I
Well,
thought it was
whoever-
Brian Stan.
Might have been Brian Stan, actually. Did I say Kenny? Yeah, Kenny I don't think is doing that anymore. So they talked up, Vitor's fast hands even at this age. No, actually the problem at this age is that his hands aren't nearly as fast. The punches he was throwing looked slow as hell, and Kevin Gastelum dodged them easily. But on top of that, you add everything else to where Vitor's head movement was never great, but his footwork was. Especially in terms of leaping in, and later on in his career actually leaping in and out. His defensive footwork, okay, not so much, but his offensive footwork was always really good. Now that he didn't have that anymore, he wasn't landing. You said you didn't think I don't think he landed a single significant strike either. And on top of that, when he would disengage while walking backwards, his hands are low and his head is stiff. And that's always actually been a problem for him, even when he was actually good. But now it's even worse. And you watched the first combination, which was even worse than the one he ended up getting TKO'd with. Gastelum throws 4 punches. The first 2 are at fully extended, while Vitor is just casually walking backwards, hands down rather, head not moving. Well, his head was down later. Head's completely still, and he just absorbs 4 punches in a row before he could react. And they weren't particularly devastating punches or super well timed or anything. He was just basically casually walking back, and props to Gastelum for making him pay. And the actual the TKO, the flurry that ended up ending the fight, was actually pretty similar, which tells you that this guy is done, basically, and which also tells you that you can't quite tell how good Gastelum is. I'm sure he's good, but yeah, I mean, is he good enough to, I don't know, challenge for the title? As long as Michael Bisping is the champion, I guess he is. He might even beat Bisping. Who knows?
Gastelum's only 25, so there's still room for improvement there.
That's a very good point, actually. That is a good point.
I don't think he's bad.
He's definitely good.
Yeah,
but I don't think his ceiling is quite is necessarily very high, though.
Future welterweight champion.
Oh, I forgot about that. Well, good thing he's at middleweight then.
Actually, he won the middleweight tournament, so maybe he was a future middleweight champion.
No, he was definitely a welterweight when that happened. He was definitely a welterweight.
All right.
I even remember that was said when George St. Pierre was the champion, and that's sort of what offended me the most.
Oh, fair enough. Well, he has a split decision loss against the current welterweight champion. If he could just drop that weight, he'll be okay.
It took me 7 seconds to remember who the current welterweight champion is, which is not good considering we were talking about him last week.
The fight, Gastelum did what he needed to do, which, as you said, that's all you can ask for in these fights. Vitor's got one fight left on his contract. Give him a Legends fight. He talked about a Legends division, which we got a spot open always in Tri-FC for Vitor Belfort. Just have him fight Shogun Hua. I feel like that's a fight that should have happened in Pride that needs to just happen.
If it had happened in Pride, I don't think that would have killed some extra brain cells for Vitor. I think that's about as bad a matchup for Vitor as you could have picked in Pride. Later on in UFC, when Vitor was actually good and Shogun's knees were killed and he'd lost his title, that was the worst possible fight for Shogun. Right now, it's the best possible fight for both because who knows what the fuck happens.
Yeah, that's why just let it happen. It's two names.
Sense.
Yeah, it's two names that have never fought each other that are, Vitor, it's his last fight. Shogun's not fighting for a title ever again, most likely, so...
Yeah, watch till you see Michael Bisping get him next.
So just have these guys fight. I don't see what's wrong with it.
Oh, nothing's wrong with it. Of course, a Legends division, realistically speaking, although I fully endorse the idea, is not realistic because it ignores weight classes.
Yeah, so what? Who cares?
Okay, so you just want a Legends division in which BJ Penn can fight Lyoto Machida. Oh wait, that actually happened.
Yeah.
No, but I deliberately picked that fight to make that joke. Come on. But basically, no weight classes. So it's an open weight
height
division?
Classes.
Oh, height. Okay. Wow, that I forgot about that dumb idea. So, but a Legends division, obviously, realistically, is not that feasible. But you can sort of make a Legends division without actually making one, if that makes any sense. You just make Legends fight each other. And we always talk about this. That's the sort of fights you want to give Legends, unless, it's a fight like this one where, okay, Gastelum gets a win over a recognizable name. Except a lot of times I'm opposed to those because it's unfair to the legend to get his brains bashed in like that. It's a bit unfortunate. So just have them fight. Or for me, so you don't give them the young guys that will actually beat him. You either give them fight like Vellante and Shogun, a fight they can actually win, or you make them fight each other. That's what I think should happen with Legends. I think that's actually what we talked about. That was our ideas. That sort of fights Legends should get. Okay, a winnable fight, like Anderson's last fight. Who was it against?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember his name either.
Derek Brunson.
Good call. Or you have Anderson fight, say, I don't know, Shogun or Vitor again or something like that. Regardless, yeah, I'm I'm completely behind the idea of Vitor fighting Shogun.
Speaking of Shogun, he defeated Gian Villante, knocked him out. He didn't look great through 2 rounds, and then all of a sudden, I think he slipped a punch, which was surprising to see in the 3rd round, and just killed Villante with a combination, starting off with a left hook, I believe. And yeah, Shogun is back.
What slipped a punch? What do you mean he slipped a punch?
He slipped the punch. What do you mean, what do I mean? You sound like my girlfriend right now.
Why is that surprising, though?
She heard me, and she was...
Oh.
And now I'm getting chastised from upstairs.
Then don't be so loud.
She does that all the time, though. I say something that seems clear as day, and she goes, "What do you mean?"
Hey, I mean, it's come on. So some things can be confusing, like how snorkels work. Anyway.
She can't hear you, so that...
Okay, well, you should have just repeated that.
Yeah, that joke loses a little bit of sting, but that was a good one.
All right. Obviously, Shogun did not look good for 2 rounds. However, one thing I'll say about Shogun, it is similar to what we were talking about Vitor. Shogun actually had like a couple of phases in his career, except unlike Vitor, for the most part, he was always good until he got old. And he has the excuse of having a shit ton of injuries, which we've discussed last week.
Shogun's phases are greatest light heavyweights at the time, and then bad knees. Those are his only 2 phases.
It was, yeah, actually, that is very true. He was definitely the best light heavyweight in Pride since the Grand Prix that he actually won. Even though Vanderlei Silva was officially the champion, since 2015 he was the best light heavyweight in the world. Then he came to the UFC with bad knees and lost, and then somehow became the greatest light heavyweight in the world again, and then had another knee injury. So it's like greatest light heavyweight in the world, knee injury, greatest light heavyweight in the world, knee injuries, and then old and a lot of knee injuries. That's Shogun, honestly. His UFC title win, I think, will end up doing great favors for his legacy because, obviously, I mean, anytime you win a UFC title, that does a great favor for your legacy. But it's also because, remember the narrative at the time, and it's not necessarily a false one. It does hold some merit, was that a lot of these Pride fighters were very disappointing in the UFC. There are many reasons for that. Contrary to what Joe Silva says, it's not because this is not Japan, but rather...
But he's not wrong. It's not Japan.
Well, technically that is correct. It's rather because a lot of them came in with plenty of mileage. A lot of them were sort of... Vanderlei definitely came past his prime. I mean, Rodrigo Nogueira came in with God knows how much brain trauma. And he still became the champion. Like, I'm sorry, with all due respect to Randy Couture. That's like the only interim champion I can ever take seriously is Rodrigo Nogueira. Because that was the only available active title at the time. Because Randy Couture was holding a title hostage for nobody knows why, actually. He wanted to fight Fedor.
That would have been more money, which you can't blame the guy.
Can't blame the guy, but he... At the time, that was still a kind of a bitch move, honestly.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely a bitch move at the time because it was not only more money, but it was also the whole Fedor thing. And it was just how he went about it. Yeah.
So, Nogueira, Shogun at the time, when he lost to Forrest Griffin, and that's still one of the biggest upsets ever. Forrest, I mean, you got to have respect for him. He's an overachiever. Out of respect for what he did. Not necessarily him. He's an overachiever, did so much with so little and all. But that was like, wow, like Shogun, what a disappointment. Because he came in, he's probably the one that everybody had the most hope for. And he lost that fight, got injured again for a long-ass time, came back, looked absolutely atrocious against Mark Coleman. And then went through, and that's the phase I want to discuss, probably the best phase of his career in terms of being a complete fighter. The 2 Machida fights and the Liddell fight before that. That's really when he looked at his best. You could argue for his Pride days, for sure. But that's a different type of fighter. He was like this young berserker who was just super athletic, extremely explosive, shit ton of power, who will just walk in and has an iron chin, probably the most, I don't want to say underrated chin, because usually when you say underrated about something, it's like, oh yeah, it's good, but it doesn't get enough credit. No, Shogun's chin is like legendary. And he can absorb any punch that he wants. He doesn't care, and he will walk in and punch you a lot, kick you, knee you, stomp you on the ground. That's like the Japanese Shogun, the one that killed Quentin Jackson or Ricardo Arona. And then you have like the more technical one that knew how to utilize his full arsenal. And that's one thing about Shogun, and that's sort of relevant to this fight, is his boxing, despite always being a striker, who in fairness has a great ground game. His boxing is, technique-wise, is pretty god-awful, honestly. It looks awful. Except he hits like a truck, so even when his punches don't connect cleanly, like the one he dropped Chuck Liddell with, or the one he knocked out Machida with, none of those punches actually... Dude, even the one he landed, some of the ones he landed in this fight, he just lands like, basically they're clotheslines, almost. But he just has a lot of power, and what he always had was terrific timing. He's not, obviously, Shogun's not a counter puncher, but he knows how to counter at the right time, if that makes sense. Because when you think of a counter puncher, you think of somebody that's technical, somebody that's, will slip a punch, dodge, and counter, like Anderson, maybe. But that's not Shogun. But what he does is punish sloppy punches. He was doing that a lot in this fight when Vellante was throwing his jab. Shogun was always countering with an overhand right. He's really good at that. Remember the second Machida fight where Machida leaps in with that knee to the body that he does, and Shogun just completely lands the overhand right and ends the fight. He knows he doesn't really let you breathe. If you make that one mistake, he punishes it, which is weird for somebody who's not that technical. But what he is actually technical at is his kicks, and that's definitely the aspect that's like completely making him irrelevant now, is that he lost his best tool. He barely throws a kick anymore. His knees are completely gone. First time that was very evident was, I would say the John Jones fight, but he didn't have the chance to throw anything in that fight. The Forrest Griffin rematch, which he won in Brazil. And I know that only lasted it couldn't have lasted 2 minutes, I don't think, maybe 2 minutes. He didn't throw a single kick in that fight, and it was pretty evident. And then you saw the Henderson fight and everything since. It's like, yeah, okay, this guy's knees are completely shot. He can't throw a kick. Where you compare that to the first Machida fight, where everybody was wondering, like, okay, how the hell is he going to win? Lyoto was untouchable, like almost literally untouchable. And this guy's like, oh, yeah, you kick him a lot. It's a shame that he lost that. He can't fight that way. And he also can't fight as aggressive as he used to. And he, too, lost that leaping ability. Like, Shogun is somebody else who's also, like, has that step forward when he moves, covers so much ground, and can leap in with so much power. Just like the Chuck Liddell, actually, knockout. That's a very good example of that. And he has lost all of that. What he still does have is power. He's trying to fight more technically. You can see it in this fight, like, more technically by Shogun standards. You can see it in this fight. He definitely was trying to, like, throw more combinations that are a bit slightly more diverse than the left-hand, right-hand combinations he used to throw, like left hook, right uppercut all the time. But the problem is, to do that, he has to stand at a range much closer than he used to. Because he doesn't have that leaping ability anymore, because he can't throw kicks, he has to fight at a much closer range, which makes him prone to being caught, which happened in the first round. And obviously, because his chin isn't as good, it makes him more prone and vulnerable. And this guy is, I don't want to say only 35, but he's not that old compared to other old fighters. But with the injuries, with all that being gone, with him having to change his style somewhat and to fight a fight that is not really what allows him to excel, it makes it really difficult for him. But he is like that basketball player who always relied on athleticism, who's always super explosive, who despite not having like great fundamentals on defense or offense, his athleticism allowed him to compensate. And now he's at a stage in his career where he lost all of that. So guys are exposing him on defense. They're taking advantage of the fact that he can't drive anymore, but he can still do one thing, and that's shoot. And that Shogun can still do that. He still has the power. And he still has probably the best killer instinct ever in MMA. Like, ever. He looked pretty mediocre throughout the fight, but that finishing combo, remember 2 weeks ago we were talking about that? It's like when fighters cover up. Like, what do you do when fighters cover up? A lot of fighters just punch them
Punch them in the arms.
Punch him in the arms. Look at what Shogun did. The first thing he does after he punches him twice is he throws that beautiful hook to the body. And there was something aesthetically pleasing about the way Villante's body zigzagged. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you saw it on the replay. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
He Dolph Ziggler zagged.
Dude, you know, oh, stop. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes or no? I feel like I've been talking about this fight for 10 minutes, so let's just wrap this up.
No, I mean, I know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about in context of this
that
fight.
Flurry. See when
I will
Shogun
rewatch the GIF right now.
Yeah, and look at what Villante's body does when Shogun connects that left hook. This is how you know that a body shot hurts. And as you do that, I'll continue. And so as his body just leans as if like the wind is sort of blowing in its direction in both ways, Shogun corners him against the fence. As Villante is covering up, I'm sure as you're watching the GIF right now, you will see that every single punch Shogun threw as Villante was against the fence actually went through his arms and landed. Because he actually came from different angles. One of them was an uppercut. It's not like, oh, I'm so excited I have this guy rocked, so I'm just going to throw anything and everything. Killer instinct, to me, Shogun is by far the best in MMA history. Only rivaled by probably Anderson, and tied for second would be Vitor and Vanderlei Silva. All Brazilians. We've talked about that before.
Brazilians are born with purple belts and killer instinct.
And jiu-jitsu.
I said purple belt.
Oh, jiu-jitsu is like a brown belt?
Isn't a purple belt like one of the lowest things you can achieve? Like, it's right above white belt, isn't it?
Yeah, it is one of the lowest things you can achieve, but if you're born with that, that's still good.
Yeah,
you're
I know.
Already born. Yeah, okay. So you said born with killer instinct, and I said and jiu-jitsu. What's wrong with that?
Because I said born with a purple belt and killer instinct.
Oh, I thought you said born with a purple belt in killer instinct. I thought there's because that sounds like a wacky theory you should have. Like, there should be belts for killer instinct. Actually, there should be belts for killer instinct.
I'm doing this now.
Something good came out of this dumb argument.
Yeah. I see what you mean where his body zigged and zagged. He looked like he just looked drunk. He just looked drunk.
Like, that punch hurt him so badly. You can see, and then watch the final few punches, how everything actually slips through his guard. That's how you finish somebody. Shogun, who, to me, best example of killer instinct I can ever think of is the Lyoto Machida fight, the second one, where as he's knocking him down, he already has him in mount, gets the, well, for lack of a better term, what does Joe Rogan call it? The rape choke?
Yeah.
And yeah, he once called it that on air, which is bad, and punches him twice. You remember that knockout?
Yeah.
The way, I swear they landed on the ground at the same time, which is amazing to me in terms of awareness. Shogun lands the overhand right. Machida's dropping down, and as he hits the ground, Shogun is already in mount. Punches him twice and looks at Yves Levine and goes like, hey, he's done. Like, he stopped his own fight before Yves did.
My favorite Shogun knockout isn't even... I don't even know if it's killer instinct. It just shows his reflexes and just his awareness with everything is the Arona, where he missed the stomp and is just like, I'm just going to hammer fist you now since I missed this
I was
stomp.
actually, when I was thinking about this fight, when I watched the Vellante fight, and I was thinking about, like, I was doing mental bullet points for me to verbally blow Shogun for this podcast. That's actually the example I wanted to give. It's like he does this trademark flying stump thing in Pride, where he just flies over Arona's guard. And, like, for a split second, you don't quite know if the stomp landed or not, because there was, like, a slight bit of hesitation where Arona wasn't doing anything, and Shogun's like, oh, well, and just, like, hammer fists him a couple of times and knocks him out. Like, that is, awareness is actually a very good way of describing him in general, what makes him good. Because we talk about this, and that's another thing I want to talk about. It's more of a general point. Definitely applies to Shogun and many others. We talked about this before. Like, MMA is a sport where it's really all about being really good at something, preferably something, I want to say offensive, but that's misconstrued, something more offense-based, and concealing your weaknesses. Because few fighters are actually, well, no fighters are perfect at MMA, and actually most of them do have clear weaknesses. Like, say, even Anderson Silva's takedown defense, when it comes to power doubles from this, like, it's fine if it's in the clinch against the cage, but when it comes to, like, good wrestlers shooting power doubles, this takedown defense is not good. Taos Ladies took him down. Nobody remembers that because that fight stunk, but Taos Ladies actually took him down, and I don't even think it was a power double because I don't think Taos Ladies has that in his arsenal. Travis Lutter took him down. Chael just ran through him. But he developed his game, and everything else about his game was as close to perfection as it gets. But he developed it also in a way that allowed him to conceal that. Shogun's flaws are much more obvious. His boxing is technically terrible, but he built his whole striking game in a way. In his Pride days, he compensated with that for that with power, aggression, timing, quickness, all of the above that we just discussed. And his takedown defense, which was never good, was compensated by him being really good off his back in terms of sweeping, being active. He even developed a leg lock game that's not threatening to anybody other than Kevin Randleman. You know what I'm talking about, those leg locks that he goes for. But he actually uses them to reverse the position and get back to his feet. I mean, Joe Rogan will tell you that Shogun has excellent leg locks every time he goes for one. The only guys prone to that are those that train a team. Oh shit, I messed up that joke. What is it called? Where Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman, and that guy that got killed by Frank Mir train. Team Hammerhouse?
Yeah.
Hammerhouse, yeah. Other than that, Shogun's leg locks are not a threat, but he developed them in a way that allowed him to escape off his back. So he actually is a very good example of somebody that truly concealed his weaknesses. Not conceal as in he just masked them in a way where even though they're still obvious, they're not quite as exploitable as they should be, and compensated by truly maximizing the things he's great at. And as a result, he's one of the best fighters in MMA history. Props to you, Shogun, who are my second favorite fighter of all time, after Josh Neer, which is a joke I made last week, but I'm just reinforcing it.
Edson Barboza defeated Beneil
Ooh,
Dariush.
what a fight that was.
Yeah, didn't last long. It was only about a round and a half. I thought Dariush won the first round. He pressured Barboza a lot, and Barboza's jab looked really good. I mean, his boxing in general looked really good, but Dariush pressured him and landed a lot on top of all that pressure. It's not like it was pressure for naught, like Clay Guida or somebody. And then the second round, it was kind of more of the same, but that knockout.
Wow. Dude, that honestly might be one of the best knockouts I've ever seen. I actually think that might be my favorite flying knee of all time.
Dariush landed a jab and then ducked under for a takedown. And at the same time he went down, Barboza went up with a flying knee. And the fact that, like, it's made visually more impressive by the fact that he lands this jab beforehand.
Yeah, dude, that knockout, that's why it's my favorite. It's not quite as brutal looking as some of the other flying, like I don't know, Aldo on Cup Swanson, that double flying knee. Actually, that might take the cake as far as flying knees go, because he landed both knees and they both opened gashes on Swanson's forehead. Yeah, and Aldo's a bad guy, in case you haven't heard. Barboza is actually not that dissimilar to Aldo in fighting style. He does remind me of him a bit. I feel that's an obvious comparison, but
defensively, not as good.
Not nearly as good. No, I mean, in every way, he's not as good. He's a great athlete. Really good takedown defense. Good movement. Stays active on his feet. Moves a lot. He does have a diverse striking game. Great kicker. He does have a lot of attributes that are similar to Aldo. Obviously not as good and more exploitable weaknesses. Did you say Brazilian?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that wasn't obvious. All right.
His nickname is Junior, just like
see, that's better. Much better. Okay. So, for the fight, I also thought Dariush won the first round. If I say handily, it makes it sound like he dominated, but to me there was no doubt that he won it.
Yeah.
He landed the better shots. It's not just the fact that he was pushing forward. He was actually landing. He was actually doing a very good job at using his jab to set up anything that followed it. So a lot of times he would throw the jab and either follow it with an overhand left, I guess, because overhand left. He's a southpaw. Or like a knee to the body, or he would throw the jab and immediately try to get the clinch, the thigh clinch, which he did at a couple of occasions, but wasn't very successful. But so for the most part, that round was going his way. But that's really the power of adjustment, and that's why I love this fight. To me, one thing I always appreciate in MMA is when you punish bad habits, because we don't see that nearly as often as we should in the sport, even at the highest level. And props to Barboza's corner, first of all. Throughout the fight, you can actually hear the cornering. When the fight is taking place, we always talk about cornering. You don't want to just yell the same thing. You just want to give good, simple advice.
Head movement and clench.
Even talking. Exactly. And he kept saying hands up when you separate, and he kept saying center of the cage, because a lot of times when Barboza was moving around, Dariush actually almost had him pinned, so he just had to circle and stand in the middle of the cage, center of the cage. So that was good advice. Then in between rounds, he just gave him similar advice, a bit more detailed. Barboza did the necessary adjustment because I just said that in the first round, Dariush was having so much success setting everything up with his jab, but that actually ended up being his undoing. He went to the well one time too many, but it's funny how that worked out. He was using his jab, and every time he would throw something different afterwards. A couple of times before that, he went for a level switch after the jab, but everything he was doing involved sort of leaning down, either an uppercut or trying to go for a takedown or whatever. But as luck would have it, when Barboza timed that flying knee, he was going for a takedown. So it was the worst possible case scenario. But it's not luck per se. That's just a dumb way of saying it. I misspoke. It's actually awareness because, okay, so if he was throwing an uppercut, maybe the flying knee wouldn't have connected quite as cleanly and the effect wouldn't quite be as devastating. But the fact is, after the jab, he was tilting his head down and giving it and switching levels every time. Now, what he does after switching levels differed. But Barboza, to be able to be that aware and time it that perfectly, and for it to be that quick, that's the thing about it. The thing is, I did not see this fight live. And when I rewatched it, I only knew that Barboza won. I didn't know when or how. So that came as a surprise to me when I saw it. My mouth was wide open. the timing, visually, it looks so fucking perfect. The leap forward, the fact that he just absorbed the jab, and the fact that Dariush lands on his back. Like, you know, it was like just a knockout and boom. Like, it was over. Barboza just throws one hammer fist and then stops. It really was beautiful. It almost was like a counter flying knee, which is not necessarily a strike you would associate with a counter shot. But it really was. Just a perfect knockout.
Great performance by Barboza with that knockout. Barboza is one of those guys he doesn't quite have that signature win, which sounds weird to say considering he's beat Anthony Pettis and Gilbert Melendez. But he's got losses to Ferguson, Michael Johnson, Donald Cerrone. But he's one of those guys you can put in there against anybody, and he's going to make it a fight, and he's going to have a chance to beat him. Like a lot of guys at featherweight, really, featherweight is very... I think he's a featherweight. Is he lightweight? Okay, whatever.
Lightweight.
That division, there's a lot of good fighters in that division up top. I mean, really, the entire top 10 is great for lightweight, and I'm sure he'll win an interim title one day.
Almost fight always.
Yeah, he'll win an interim title one day, I'm sure.
Oh, I spoke at the time you were making that joke.
Yeah,
so
that's all right.
He probably will. I'm with you. I actually do think he misses that signature win. I mean, honestly, when you brought up the Melendez win, I completely forgotten about that, which, you know, is an indicator that, yeah, you're right. He doesn't quite have that win. It's probably because his winning streaks have been interrupted by some of the losses you brought up. So the momentum hasn't always been behind him to where, I mean, Tony Ferguson is an extreme example because he's won like 1 billion fights in a row. But he hasn't won, he hasn't had that surge of momentum where he's won so many fights in a row with that one signature win to where it's like, oh yeah, this guy should be getting a title shot. Because I feel like no matter who he fights against, no matter who the champion is, you're not going to write him off. I mean, okay, I'm not saying he's favored against Conor. He's not. I'm not even saying I think he gets beaten up convincingly. But let's just say Conor McGregor is supposed to fight, I don't know, Khabib next, or Tony Ferguson or whatever. And that guy gets injured and they throw an Edson Barboza in there. Would you be that opposed to it?
No, I'd actually like to really see Barboza against Tony Ferguson in a rematch. Their last fight was December 2015, so it wasn't too long ago. But you know, Barboza's won 3 straight against Pettis, Melendez, and now Dariush, and Ferguson's still been on a roll. I think that's still a good fight. I know Eddie Alvarez is fighting somebody. He's fighting Dustin Poirier upcoming. I wouldn't mind Barboza getting the winner of that fight, Alvarez and Poirier. I think that would be a great fight.
Oh, Barboza-Alvarez would be a great fight. That's the thing. When you're stylistically as pleasing as Barboza is, it's almost impossible for him to have a bad fight, especially given the division he's in, too, because most of the other guys are exciting as well. Lightweight is the best division in MMA. It's been for a long, long time in terms of talent and overall skill level. I feel like the lightweight fighters are the least flawed in general. You watch lightweight fights and it's really, really rare for you to go oh, that sucked. As long as they involve, top fighters. And that's the other thing at lightweights. As far as lightweight goes, top fighters are top fighters. It's not he's the 6th ranked middleweight, which means you probably are mediocre. The top lightweight.
Yeah, the top 15 in lightweight are better than the top 5 in most divisions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's really been the underrated crowning jewel of MMA for a long time. In terms of history, the light heavyweight division has always had the biggest stars, the biggest names. It's almost like MMA's heavyweight division, the way boxing heavyweight division has historically been. light heavyweight division in MMA is that. It's almost like it should be the heavyweight division in terms of like marquee names and all that. But in terms of depth, talent, history of great fights, the lightweight division, I mean, think about it, especially because it's a relatively, well, compared to the lower weight classes after the WC merger, it's not that recent. But compared to every other weight class, it's a relatively recent division. BJ Penn, you know, since pretty much it's been put on the map with Penn's return when he beat Pulver. And since then, it's gotten actually more exciting after Penn lost the title. So even if you ignore like the generation that's like Penn, Stevenson, Shirk, Kenny Florian, those guys, everything that came after is always great. You know, Edgar, Maynard, Ben Henderson, Melendez, all those guys, and all the way to the fighters who are currently on top. It's really, I feel by far, it has the greatest portfolio of exciting fights in MMA history that actually look like they're professional fights. Not a exciting fight like Mark Hunt and Bigfoot Silva, which, don't get me wrong, is great. But it also involved 2 rounds of fighters being completely out of oxygen and just fighting on sheer heart. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know.
The bottom 3 fights, Ray Borg beat Jussier da Silva. That guy's fallen off. Borg just...
Jussier da Silva is the guy that was supposed to be Lyoto Machida?
Jussier da Silva was basically the best flyweight in the world when there was no flyweight division. And then he came to the UFC when there was a flyweight division, and he got knocked out by John Dotson. And then he lost a fight to Benavidez. I think he won a couple of fights after that. But
who am I thinking of? Remember that lighter weight class fighter that like was like a blend of Lyoto Machida and I don't know which other Brazilian fighter.
Yeah, that was in a Sun Sao, wasn't it? Not Rafael Sun Sao.
Maybe it was a Sun Sao. I don't remember.
No, it wasn't Jussier da Silva though. He was basically the best flyweight when no one paid attention to flyweights. And in fairness, no one does pay attention to flyweights still today. Marian Renew and Betch Kohea went to a majority draw, which was a bad decision, and then Kohea twerked. And
okay.
I mean, that's what happened. And then Alex Oliveira defeated Tim Means. Oliveira looked good. I kind of like Alex Oliveira. Don't know how good.
You like all the Alexes and all the Oliveiras, by the way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's pretty fair, I guess.
There are names that you just like. I'm serious. What's the other Oliveira that
Charles Oliveira?
Charles Oliveira.
Du Bronx.
He's your boy. And you like yourself some Alex Sabrinas. I know, different sport and all, but
very true. Overall, though, a good card, especially with those top 3 fights. Again, rare for a fight night. So good job, UFC. Just go to Brazil more often.
Yeah, if only that was last week's show.
Yeah.
Well, the previous week's show, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. God, that. Yeah.
There's another fight night, and the card on paper doesn't look nearly as good, but a couple things to talk about. Jimmy Manua against Corey Anderson. We're not talking about this fight. I'll pick Jimmy Manua because
I'll pick Jimmy Manua too.
Why not? I don't think I've ever seen Corey Anderson fight, to be quite honest with you.
Jimmy Manua is a Japanese legend, Manua Man.
Sure.
What happened to Manoa, by the way? What is
I don't know. I'm going to look him up.
Yeah, what happened to Manoa, man? Remember, there was a time where it was he and Yoshihiro Akiyama. They were like sensations. Yoshihiro Akiyama was just a sensation because he was sexy. And
Manoa Man was he won remember the awesome
what you're talking about?
Yeah, the Super Hulk tournament.
Super Hulk.
What a fucking tournament that was.
Super Hulk is the original Tri-FC, you gotta admit.
Yeah, it definitely
is. It really is the original Tri-FC.
Manoa Man has not fought since February 2016. His record in MMA is 62. Excuse me, 62, 41, and 8. That's a lot of fights to not have a good record.
He'd be the 6th seed in the West.
Yeah, Manoa, man, what a guy! What a company Dream was. I miss them.
I miss Dream too. They did put on some great fights. Remember Joaquin Hansen and somebody
and Eddie Alvarez.
Eddie Alvarez.
Alvarez had the great fights with Kawajiri, I think it was.
Kawajiri, yeah. That's actually further proof of why the lightweight division is the best. That's not even UFC lightweights. At the time,
even the Dream lightweight tournament was great. Like
fantastic.
Like
absolutely fantastic.
We love the Super Hulk for the wackiness, but like that lightweight tournament was actually like just great fight after great fight.
Oh, dude, remember? I don't know if it was Dream though. Hatsuhiyuki had like some fantastic fights. Was it Dream? You can continue talking. I'm looking up his record, so you just kill airtime.
Oh, I remember when Joe Warren beat Kid Yamamoto in Dream, and then he got submitted by Bibi Fernandez and ran to the back and cried like a bitch.
Oh, okay. Well, Hatsuhiyuki, that was not Dream, unfortunately, so I'm mistaken. Yeah, I was thinking about his fight with Marlon Sandro. That was not Dream.
Oh, yeah.
That was fantastic, though.
Dream had some good fights.
Where Kawajiri had like not a trilogy, but 2 fantastic fights with God. My memory.
Eddie. I thought it was Eddie Alvarez.
Was it Eddie? What am I thinking about then? Maybe it's not Kawajiri. I'll remember the 2 fights I'm talking about. But I'll tell you what I'm thinking of. Hold on. God, this is terrible. I'll remember eventually.
Okay.
What was it? Kazuo Misaki.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of the Misaki.
I'm talking about Misaki at middleweight against
Santiago.
Against George Santiago.
George
there
Santiago.
you go. Mystery solved. Was that Dream?
I don't think that was Dream. That was that other Japanese company. I think that was the same company that Hatsuhiyuki was.
Yeah, I'm checking it out. It out. But those are, it is Victory World Victory Road.
Yeah,
that is. Both those fights were something else.
Yeah, they were both fantastic.
Absolutely phenomenal fights. Even though MMA obviously is made to be fought in a cage, like the cage is just better on every level as far as practicality goes. There is something about the ring that gives a fight a different allure. I don't know if you understand my point. Like it's not quiet.
I was watching something, and it was a ring, but the bottom rope was a cage.
Wow, that's actually...
like from the mat to the bottom rope, they had a cage around it, so guys couldn't fall through.
Oh, the cage should be a bit higher, and then you can escape and win.
Sure.
Dude, wouldn't that add excitement to MMA fights?
Like if you did escape the cage?
Yeah.
Would if you knock a guy out, though, and then tried to climb?
You knock a guy, like it's a TKO, they're trying to survive, you don't bother, you just climb the cage.
Yeah, but do you have to climb slower on purpose so they can come in and grab your foot and pull you back down?
Oh, to add for the drama?
Yeah.
Maybe. Mike Goldberg, rest his soul, I wish he was still here, could yell climb the cage, kid, make yourself famous, but he would probably fuck it up somehow. And, dude, that needs to happen.
We'll do that in Tri-FC.
Husamar Polaris would win that for easily because, he climbed the cage mid-fight anyway and was not to be stopped. Anderson did that as well. Did Anderson climb the cage?
I think so.
But the round was over when Anderson did it. It wasn't quite mid-fight. It wasn't like Husamar. What Husamar Polaris did is something else.
Yeah.
Who would be, athletic enough to where, he'd be unstoppable? If he were to do that.
John Jones. The correct answer is just always John Jones.
Yeah, but he can win anyhow. I'm thinking of somebody who's Demetrius Johnson, but he could also win anyhow. So the best fighters would still be the best fighters. Okay, scratch that idea.
Gunnar Nelson fights Alan Jouban. This just seems like a gimme fight for Gunnar Nelson as they try to turn him into a star despite no one having an actual reason to care about Gunnar Nelson.
Good point.
He shows no emotion. That's why you're supposed to care about him. Hell of a marketing team.
That worked out for Fedor. He never showed emotions.
And Brad Pickett fights Marlon Vera, and the only reason I'm bringing this fight up is because people do know who Brad Pickett is. And it's apparently his last fight, and the UFC released a tribute video for Brad Pickett ahead of his last fight.
Brad Pickett got a tribute video?
Can you tell me a single Brad Pickett UFC victory? I know all of his losses, I feel like. I don't know a single win he has.
Dude, look, I've seen plenty of Brad Pickett fights. I swear if you showed me a picture of him right now, like, you tell me pick Brad Pickett out of a lineup, I'm just as likely to pick any other WEC guy and tell you that, yeah, that's probably him. Like, I might even pick Scott Jorgensen. Actually, Scott Jorgensen had that
that weird disease
skin thing, that disease on his skin. So maybe I'll be able to pick him up. But you know what I mean.
I know what Brad Pickett looks like, but I honestly can't tell you any of his wins. Like, I remember him getting decimated by Renan Barão. I think he had a good fight with Eddie Wineland, which was like a title eliminator fight. And I know he lost his last fight to Uriah Faber. So I know who Brad Pickett is. Why is this guy getting a tribute video?
But whatever. If you want to give him a tribute video, give him a tribute video. But
but they're doing more for.
Did Uriah Faber get a tribute video?
Yeah, Uriah Faber. They talked a lot about him on Fox.
Okay. Did Mike Goldberg get a tribute video?
That was where I was going with this. Is they're doing more with Brad Pickett or for Brad Pickett than they did for Mike Goldberg.
I mean, everybody gets more than Mike Goldberg because Mike Goldberg got literally nothing.
Yeah,
like literally nothing. That's the other. He didn't even get a goodbye. I mean, he did get to see Ronda Rousey get knocked out. That's actually, it's fitting that was his last call.
Let's talk about the MMA Tournament of Bad, which is the best thing about MMA, actually.
Okay, explain what it is, though, for those who are unaware.
Yeah, I was going to. How about you just stop? The MMA Tournament of Bad is put together by Mike Fagan. You can follow him on Twitter at It's Mike Fagan. He's been doing this for a few years now, and it's March Madness, but with MMA. Every single organization, website, whatever you want to have it, does some type of tournament in March to coincide with the NCAA tournament. And Fagan is no exception, except his just goes with MMA. And so throughout the year, he collects all the worst things about MMA, and he has I think the list got up to like 200 this year. There's only 64 spots for this tournament. And yeah, the list grew up to 200, and it works like any other online tournament. You vote for what you think is the absolute worst or the best of the worst, or however your voting mind works. And in the end, a winner is crowned to find out what was the worst thing about MMA in 2017, really 2016. And it's great because it reminds you of how stupid and dumb and nonsensical and petty and throw some other words out there for me, Samer.
Absolute awful. I mean, absolute awful is not even grammatically correct. Absolutely terrible, awful, disastrous. Disaster is the word of the month now. It is a buzzword.
Shady.
Worst ever.
Yeah.
Shady.
Basically, how bad this sport is.
Bad is the word. That's what the tournament is called. You don't need to find synonyms. It's just bad. It really... Look, remember, we always used to say, you know, like, I said this, in fairness, I kind of stole it. It wasn't... I heard somebody say something similar, but not in as many words. But I said, and you always agreed, that I hate everything about the sport except the fight themselves.
Yes.
Like, the promoters, fuck them. The fans, awful. Everything. The refereeing, the judging, the Dana White, USADA, everything about it, the press conferences, the dumb comments, the terrible personalities, Ronda Rousey. Did I make my point clear? Everything about the sport. But the fights are awesome for the most part.
The fights are good when they're high-level fights or they're really bad fights.
Exactly. Everything in between is just boring.
Yeah.
And everything, that is something true. Great MMA is great, and awful MMA is great. Everything in between, not so much. But the fight, it is an exciting sport. It's a unique sport. When MMA is good, it is great. But everything that goes on around the stupid talks about buy rates, fighter salaries, everything. Dana White and Ronda Rousey, basically. They're honestly, it sounds like a joke, but it is a caricature of everything that's wrong in MMA. Ronda Rousey represents a terrible personalities, overhyped fighters, blah, 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 you name it, terrible fan bases. Dana White is just pretty much everything else, honestly. Anything is absolutely trash. And, of course, there's Tim Kennedy, which, I mean, he's going to get brought up a lot.
We're gonna run down the brackets here. Voting opened on, I think, yesterday, and first-round voting goes through the next couple of days. Again, follow Fagan on Twitter, @It'sMikeFagan. If you follow me or Sammer on Twitter, we've probably retweeted it. We'll put a link up in the description as well. Vote, because it's worth your time. And you get to learn how bad this sport is.
Yeah, that's actually the best part about it. It's not just the voting. It's because what Mike does is he gives you a background about everybody. So you about every story, incident, whatever you want to call it. So you get to see all the seats are the nominees, and you just click. And it either sends you to a quote, if it was a quote, a video, if it was a video. You get to see what form of bad this was, because a lot of these seeds, let's call them incidents, all of them, you might not have been aware of. I wasn't aware of many of them. I just checked some of them today, and I laughed. A very underrated one.
Well, let's go through them.
Okay, let's do that.
A 1 versus 16 matchup, and this is in the John Hess region. 1 versus 16 is UFC pulling Conor McGregor from UFC 200 against, that's the 1 seed, against Tim Kennedy and his PTSD rant. 16 that feels very low for that.
Very low. Okay, here's the thing. UFC pulling Conor from UFC 200 might be the worst decision of the year. Non-judging. Actually, probably worse than any judging decision. Like, in terms of just pure decision-making, it doesn't get much worse than that, because it was dumb as hell for an extremely terrible reason. On the other hand, Tim Kennedy's PTSD rant, for those unaware, is a long-winded Facebook post he made seemingly out of the blue, in which he said, to paraphrase here, the main point is that a lot of people ask him as a veteran about how he copes with PTSD. His solution to coping with PTSD, Jeremy, please help me out here,
is man up or else you're a pussy.
Exactly. That's literally his
solution.
That is literally what he said.
If you have PTSD, just man up.
Man up and don't be a pussy.
Yeah.
However, throughout the whole, that is the main idea, and he did say it in as many words. But even better yet, to reach that idea, he was talking about how he was able to man up and be a pussy despite watching some of his best friends burn, which is graphic and disturbing, but hey, the truth of war, I guess, the realities of war. But, and this is where it gets good, is he bragged about killing women and children and how that didn't faze him or affect him in any way. Now, that part is, to me, I don't want to spoil anything, but to me that is by far, that should win the tournament, because there is nothing, absolutely nothing that went on this year that could possibly rival somebody bragging about killing women and children. I don't care that it was war or anything. That dude, he killed women and children, and he bragged about it in a way. That's bad. To me, that is the favorite for me personally. I don't think it's going to win, though.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to win either. It really shouldn't be a 16 seed. Like, I think the seeding, I don't know why.
We did this with Mike.
Yeah, we're going to have Fagan on hopefully next week to discuss everything. And by that point, Tim Kennedy's PTSD rant will be out of it. But it's up against tough competition because UFC pulling McGregor from 200, everyone knows that is one thing.
Yeah, it's a higher profile.
It's very high profile, and it really killed that event. Like, and then John Jones failing out killed it even further. But just the reasoning and everything behind it, it really took a lot out of that event. The 8 versus 9 seed is Sean Hannity, street martial artist, against the New York State Assembly. What a joke that New York State Assembly was.
I'll vote for the York State Assembly, even though I have a soft spot for those with laughable martial arts credential.
Yeah, that's fair. Number 5 is, this is a weird seeding to me. This is a 12-5 upset for me. Ronda Rousey shadow boxing against You're the Best Decision I Ever Made.
Oh, dude.
I love You're the Best Decision I Ever made.
Of course. Okay, Ronda's shadow boxing is... It has see, that's what's beautiful about this tournament. What's also sad is that it is the most exciting part of the year in MMA for me. What's beautiful about this tournament is you get to see the contrast in styles, just like MMA. For instance, Ronda Rousey's shadow boxing has the benefit of being able to visually put an image to it. You saw her shadow box, and it wasn't pretty. You're the Decision I've Ever Made unfortunately lacks video evidence. If there was a video of You're the Best Decision I've Ever Made, I would have died a happy man. Unfortunately, we just have Dana's quotes, which are almost as good.
With blood, sweat, boogers and tears.
On his fucking jacket. He said, like, I must have blood, sweat, boogers, and tears all over my fucking jacket.
A 1 hour hug.
45 minutes. Let's not go overboard. He said it was a 45-minute start. My favorite part of that is I remember when we talked about that after she got knocked out, and I asked you, do you believe it? Do you think it was a 45-minute hug, or is he exaggerating? And you went, you know what? I believe it.
Yeah.
That's all I remember about that. So a 45-minute hug in which he looked at her and he said, and that really, like... that quote alone really captures the essence of when I say the MMA Tournament of Bad, everything is bad about MMA, and I say Dana White and Ronda Rousey are the caricature. I promise I didn't even have that incident in mind. But now that you bring it up, just Dana looking at her and saying, "You're the best decision I've ever made," to me is just like a new level of comedy. And it's hard to go against comedy and things that make you laugh, which also hurts Tim Kennedy's PTSD rant. See, that tournament has a lot of things for everybody. There are serious issues. There are just bad decisions, like Conor. There's comedy, like Ronda's shadow boxing. And there's comedy like Dana and Ronda's love story. Fantastic. I think I'm with you. I'm going for the 12-seed upset.
4 versus 13 is Evolution of Punk versus Perfect Never. I think Evolution of Punk easily wins that.
Although Perfect Never, I had never seen that until I clicked this morning and I saw it. That's a terrible video.
Yeah,
Perfect never gets to silence critics. Perfect. Well, yeah, because Perfect doesn't have critics, and that's good. But yeah, Evolution of Punk. Come on.
They dedicated like 4 or 5 videos for him to show how good he is becoming, and then he lost in
that's even better in hindsight. I think that's a blowout because you got to factor in what actually ended up happening too, and the amount of effort they put into that. The Perfect Never thing was just like 46-second video, so it's whatever.
6 versus 11 is McGregor versus Mayweather, and your winner by majority draw. I honestly want to go your winner by majority draw just because McGregor versus Mayweather is more tiring than bad.
I think McGregor versus Mayweather is tiring for sure. I'm sick of hearing about it. I'm sick of how much it's discussed. However, there is a bad aspect to it, which is anybody actually trying to convince us that McGregor has the slightest...
Oh, it's bad. Like, there's many things of why it's bad, but I'm just so sick of hearing about it that I don't know.
Winner by majority draw is just more of a fuck up. Like, in terms of pure badness, if that's a word, and it's not, it is definitely more bad. But last night I read Joe Rogan talking up McGregor's chances. Like, dude, haven't you learned anything? Wasn't it like a month ago where he had to basically completely backtrack on everything he said about Ronda and say, oh yeah, I got carried away, whatever. Oh, you're doing it again. Good job. I'd probably still go with majority draw, though.
3 verse 14 is Mike Goldberg's exit against Good Morning America. Did you see the Good Morning America video?
No, but I saw like Misha Tate and a bunch of other girls standing awkwardly. That was the thumbnail. Yeah. But I actually didn't click on it because I thought I'm still going to vote Mike Goldberg's exit. I mean, dude, on this podcast, we have to vote Mike Goldberg's exit.
Oh, yeah. I'm voting Mike Goldberg's exit, but that Good Morning America segment was...
okay, I'll watch it.
It was special.
I don't... See, there's something about me. I don't enjoy cringe videos. It makes me cringe too much to where it makes me uncomfortable. But MMA cringe is different. I'll just watch it. I'm assuming it's cringy. I mean,
that guy who tags fighters into convos on Twitter against Lyoto Machida's 18-month suspension.
Lyoto Machida's...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I went with the guy who tags fighters because Machida's suspension was like Machida's whatever at this point.
The suspension is awful.
Yeah.
It's way overboard considering what actually happened. Anybody read up about it. It's absolutely ridiculous that he got 18 months. And I love Lyoto Machida, but yeah, it's not exactly a fair criteria. He's just not relevant anymore. The guy that tags fighters in conversations is also related to the Tim Kennedy PTSD rant. You saw what that was, right?
Yeah.
First of all, it's Jeremy Botter of Soccer Moms fame. So
Jeremy Botter already knows who's going to win this tournament.
That's right. Let's just hope it's not Jeremy Botter. He has a history of bad. I'll say he's the worst. It's either he or Helwani, who also gets brought up a lot this year, and not without reason. So he tags Tim Kennedy to defend him about the PTSD rant by saying he completely agrees with @Tim Kennedy. And that was, by the way, in response to a tweet to someone who called Tim Kennedy a lunatic for the aforementioned rant, which I think is a very not even fair assessment. I think, if anything, that's him being too kind. So Jeremy Botter, who's supposedly a professional MMA reporter, journalist, whatever, responds to that tweet by tagging Tim Kennedy and saying he completely agrees with him because that is, and I quote, the only way to honor veterans. The only way to honor veterans is to call them a pussy.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, that definitely gets my vote.
And then the 2 verse 15 is Helwani Gate against the Passion of Nurmagomedov.
Helwani Gate, easily.
Yeah, Helwani Gate very easily.
Explain what the Passion of Nurmagomedov is, though, real quick.
I'd have to click it because I didn't.
I know what it is. I know what it is.
Okay.
For the UFC A Sport game, remember when they had?
I see it now.
Crosses his hand. He does the Christian cross gesture. And Nurmagomedov responded on Twitter that he's a Muslim, and he asked EA Sports to remove that from the game. I don't necessarily feel there's anything bad with his response. There's something I just don't understand why EA Sports would put a celebration like that for any fighter anyway. Like, just remove it. It makes no sense. And Helwani Gate, I mean, Jesus Christ, it really is one of the worst things to happen this year. Does Helwani Gate include everything, like him revealing that he was on the payroll, or is it just like what happened to him when he was banned from that particular event? Because there's a lot of Helwani-related stuff in the tournament, so I don't know.
I feel like it's everything, because the videos are like the whole episode with just everything.
Crying and coming clean about everything. Yeah, that's actually one of the tournament favorites, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. The next region, we got to get through this quicker. This podcast,
so
this podcast is already an hour and a half long.
But this is biggest proof why we love this tournament so much. We were more passionate talking about this.
We should have gotten through. We should have gotten through the fights quicker.
That's right. Too bad there was Shogun on there, and I spoke like 20 minutes about him.
John Jones, the next region, the 1 seed is John Jones, UFC 200 drug test. UFC 200 racking it up here.
Right, that's right.
Against the...
it's not the end of it because there's still the golden match.
Yeah. Against the Mike Dolce brand, John Jones easily
John Jones easily, yeah. That ruined the whole event.
Yeah.
When Conor was pulled out, even though it was a dumb decision, it just bothered me because it was a dumb decision, but I actually preferred Cormier versus Jones as a fight. To be on that card. And when Jones was pulled out a couple of days before the event, that's pretty bad.
The 8-9 is UFC pushing Fight Pass on coaches against homeless UFC fighters.
I gotta go with homeless UFC fighters on principle because it is a terrible thing. It's a really bad look for the sport.
I went with Fight Pass. I don't care.
But Fight Pass is just funnier. And I understand why you would go with Fight Pass because it is funnier. We discussed this on air, though, right? A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Number 5 is Double M, Triple A. My dark horse.
So when you told me we were going to have Mike on, I was also wondering if you were going to say Double M Triple A, and I wanted to see how he would pronounce it because so far I've never actually heard somebody talk about it other than us. So I don't know what people call it. I'm guessing it's MM Triple A.
I'm calling it Double M Triple A. I don't care what anybody else calls it.
It holds a special place in our heart. It led to whole angle. Who is it up against?
Dana wears Nike. Double M Triple A is winning.
Nah, Dana wears Nike, whatever. I know they're sponsored by Reebok. Whatever. It's Double M Triple A by a landslide.
The 4 seed is coming in 55 pounds overweight against Reebok wardrobe malfunctions. I actually don't know.
Who came in 55 pounds overweight?
I don't know. That's what I'm checking right now. That's a lot to miss weight. I'm assuming it happened on some lower...
Not a UFC. Yeah, I don't think it's a UFC event.
Gerald Harris. Remember him? And Aaron Cobb.
Oh, shit.
No,
Isn't
Harris...
that the guy that's...
He was the next Rampage. Harris didn't miss weight. It was Cobb. It says Cobb notified the promotion. This was for a Legacy FC. Cobb notified the promotion he would not be able to make welterweight in the days before the fight after weighing in more than 220 pounds.
The problem is he didn't make light heavyweight.
He was told to check in at 205 in the morning of the fight to make it a light heavyweight fight. Instead, Cobb came in. Instead, Cobb was on the same weight on fight day, so I assumed the 220. And Harris went up to 208, and so they had the fight at heavyweight. So it was a welterweight fight that turned into a heavyweight.
Heavyweight?
Yeah.
I might go with that.
Yeah, the Reebok wardrobe malfunctions isn't like a great...
Yeah, whatever. I'm going with that. A welterweight turned heavyweight fight. That's fantastic.
The 6th seed is Mike Goldberg against Joanna Jędrzejczyk 2.
Oh,
against that is up against the UFC 200 gold mat.
Oh, I'm still going with Michael because you know what video exactly he's talking about, right?
Yeah, the remix.
Yeah, the remix with then going against Claudia Gadelia.
Yeah.
You gotta go with that, dude. It's part of our gimmick on this podcast. And we
I went with that. Number 3 is Jeremy Stevens trash talk against... See, that seems too high. In this one, at least for us, Helwani saying Joe Rogan disrespected CM Punk as a 14.
By the way, you deserve credit for that because I'm pretty sure you're the one that brought the video to Fagan's attention. I'm pretty sure you sent him that link, didn't you?
No. He had... That was already on there in the tournament, and I clicked it, and they pulled it.
Oh,
and so
that's how you found out about it.
Yeah. So I brought that to his attention that the video had been pulled.
So it's Helwani calling Rogan disrespectful to Punk against what?
The Jeremy Stevens trash talk from
okay, Jeremy Stevens trash talk. What makes that moment is Connor.
Yeah.
Who the fuck is that guy? Rather than the actual trash talk of Jeremy Stevens, which was bad, don't get me wrong. But to me, the sanctity of the sport has to take it.
The sanctity of the sport is untouchable to me.
Dude, we can't not vote for that because we discussed that segment.
Oh, I voted for it.
We actually played it on air because we were. Remember when we had a gimmick for like 4 weeks in a row where we'd take a bad segment and discuss it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
no, I've already voted in these two regions, and I voted for that one.
Okay.
Dana White, this is the 7 versus the 10. Dana White speaks at the Republican National Convention against a World Series of Fighting's brother versus brother. Went with Dana.
I'm going with Dana. Dana's endorsing Trump, which is almost just as bad, by saying he's a fighter and shit like that. And basically his whole argument was that Punk, why do I keep calling him Punk? Is that Trump is a fighter and he supported the UFC, therefore you have to vote for him as president.
Sure. And the 2 versus 15.
It worked.
The 2 versus 15.
It's the best bit of promotion Dana ever did. 2 versus 15. Go. Sorry.
Cyborg cutting to 140 and promoting without promoting, which was I could spend $1 billion
on... that has to win. The Amanda Nunes thing. And nobody would know who she is after spending $200 million. Yeah, I'm voting that.
I think I did vote for that one. Cyborg cutting to 140 is bad, though.
Well, it's hard for me because we discussed both on air extensively, and I feel like we went on a rant about both.
Yeah.
But I have a soft spot for Dana idiocy, so I'll vote Dana idiocy, always.
So that's one side of the bracket. The other side, which I have not voted in, and I'm going to vote live on air.
Oh, right now on air? Ooh,
that's right.
One of the biggest moments in the history of our podcast.
The Art Jimerson side of the bracket, the Art Jimerson region. The 1 versus 16 is...
That's a good name.
The 1 versus 16 is CM Punk, UFC fighter, against getting kicked off Celebrity Apprentice. I mean, it's CM Punk.
Yeah, you know what getting kicked off Celebrity Apprentice is? It's Chael cutting the cord. I watched the video. He cut the cord of a piece of a computer to buy his team more time. So he got kicked off the show. They were late for a deadline, and they were freaking out. There was Lisa Leslie, the basketball player. She was there. A bunch of other guys.
Wait, what did you call her?
Isn't she Lisa Leslie, something?
Yeah, Lisa Leslie. It sounded like you called her Lisa Leslie.
Oh, no. Anyway, so Chael grabs a pair of scissors and cuts off the cord, and you can hear the small explosions sound, boom. Everybody freaks the fuck out. It's like, what happened? And Chael goes, I don't know what happened. He doesn't, but he has the scissors in his hands, so he has the murder weapon. It's a fantastic moment, but CM Punk UFC fighter, I mean, come on.
Yeah, you're not going to beat that. I'm sure it's a great moment, but it's not 100% MMA related, I guess. The Thunder are tied with the Nets. It doesn't matter the score. The fact that they're tied after 1 is embarrassing.
First quarter is over?
Yeah.
That should be in the basketball bet. Yeah, go ahead.
Nate Diaz is a 170-pounder against Cleveland Elevators. I'm going with Nate Diaz.
Yeah, I remember that was Dana's argument. He's huge. Nate Diaz fought most of his career at lightweight, but whatever.
Kadyrov fighting children against the Tito and Chael debate. I don't know what Kadyrov fighting children is.
Dude, he could have killed children for all I care. Which is hypocritical in light of the Tim Kennedy thing. But nothing will ever beat the Tito Chael debate.
The 4 and 30 Tito and Chael debate is actually 12. This is another 12-5 upset for me.
12? Fagan has gas coming out of his ass, and it's not his butt.
The 4 is the Damage tattoo, and 13 is Matt Brown visits Brazil.
Oh, I know both. I saw the tattoo. It's pretty terrible. Matt Brown visiting Brazil, he just gave the fans a finger, and on his way to the ring, to the cage. Like at least 3 fans actually hit him on the back of the head.
Didn't he get his shit stolen at the hotel as well?
I don't remember that, actually. Did that happen?
I'm clicking it. I just saw the damage tattoo. I mean, that's dumb, but dumb tattoos are not exactly,
I don't like Van Brown. I like his fighting style and everything. I don't like his super intense attitude. And the fact that he was fighting Damian Maia for that fight, and he was going to get crushed, and for him to act that arrogant about it, I don't know.
I'm going with Matt Brown. That's what I officially voted for.
Bad tattoos or whatever. Even though the cover for the tournament is the Johnny Cash tattoo, which is a very good.
The 6th seed is potential USADA violation. The 11th seed is you said CNN, which is some Eddie Bravo thing on Joe Rogan.
Oh, Eddie Bravo went crazy. They were on the Rogan podcast with Brendan Schaub and those guys. They were discussing, Eddie Bravo, is a huge conspiracy theorist and believes in nothing. And he asked them, what's your source of news for news? And, he named Washington Post, blah, blah, blah. And among others, he went CNN. And Eddie Bravo just completely lost his shit. It's like, CNN? Did you just say CNN? And he just wouldn't stop. That's an underwhelming matchup.
I'm voting potential USADA violation.
Yeah.
Number 3 is Edmonds cornering. That's the winner. Oh. Don't care who it's up against.
Dude, do me a favor. It's only 19 seconds. Click on the video for Edmonds cornering.
It won't play on the podcast, so it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Just watch it for 19 seconds. I'll be quiet.
Okay.
You have to. Tell me when you click play.
All right, I'm playing it now.
Okay.
That voice. His voice cracked at least 5 times during that video.
It's unbelievable. 5 times in 19 seconds.
That's an unfair, Edmonds cornering, you could have picked a number of videos, honestly.
Yeah, it was weird that was what was picked.
Yeah.
They were really is a child in front of you could have been in there.
Yeah, the whole Verdum fight. And then, of course,
wasn't that he's a child in front of you?
Yeah. I'm saying that whole Verdum fight you could put on there. Yeah. He's got nothing. You're winning this fight. And then, of course,
you gotta go Edmonds.
Oh, yeah. Verdum calling Junior Dos Santos gay is whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
The 7th seed is Lorenzo's creepy Ronda painting against the 10th seed Karen Bryant's pillow talk.
Oh, Karen Bryant's pillow talk is awful and cringy, but that Ronda painting is underrated bad. I'm going with that.
Number 2 is Ariel Helwani's integrity against Twitter suspending Grabaka Hitman. I like Grabaka Hitman.
What's Ariel Helwani's integrity?
I'm looking at it now. Oh, this is... I guess this Helwani Gate and his integrity are 2 different things. This is when him admitting to taking Zuffa checks and groveling and stuff.
Has to win.
Helwani might be in the complete Final Four.
There's a lot of Helwani and there's a lot of Dana. There's always a lot of Dana, though. But there is a lot of Helwani.
MMA Journalist of the Year, Ariel Helwani.
That should be on there. Is that not on there? The fact that he won Journalist of the Year?
I don't think so.
Should be on there.
We got one more region.
I'm going to ask about that.
All right. Well, we got one more region, and here we go. The Steve Jenham region. John Jones, this is the 1 seed. John Jones, licensed motorist, against I Can't See.
Oh, I Can't See is really bad. I saw the video this morning. She
Was it
kept
Gabriel
telling
Gonzaga?
her corner. What's that? No, not Gabriel Gonzaga. She kept telling her corner in between rounds that she couldn't see. And the cornerman goes, right eye or left eye? And she goes, I don't know, which is not a good sign. And he goes, show me your eyes. They look fine. As if, dude, dude, he went, watch that video when you get the time. And he goes like, they look fine. Let's go. And he started encouraging her. And she stresses that she couldn't see. And he just like, basically in a way forces her into the next round. Awful.
I don't think it's beating John Jones. I will vote for I Can't See, though, because John Jones' licensed motorist is whatever. That doesn't feel like a 1 seed to me.
That's when he's yelling at the cop.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's the... You never seen that video?
No, I've seen it. I didn't click the link.
That's what it is, though. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm going with the upset. Why not? The 8-9 is Cyborg Santos Skull, which is brutal, against interviewing KO'd fighters, which I feel like is the...
It's Overeem.
Yeah, the Overeem.
It's Overeem after that.
Yeah.
He didn't... Oh, I saw... Dude, that was cringy as fuck, too.
Yeah, I've
never
with
seen that interview. And Overeem goes like, I felt a tap, and Rogan actually like pushes and they show the video, and yeah. I remember you telling me about that. I'd never seen it.
Yeah, I went with that one. Number 5 is All-Star Comedy UFC edition, and the Meryl Streep comment, MMA is not the arts.
I'll go with Meryl Streep comment for the backlash.
Yeah.
Rather than the comment itself.
The 4 seed is Gabby Garcia, who ran... You know who that is, right?
You the one that ran the 4 ropes? Is that the 4 sides? Oh, God, yeah.
That's the MMA Tournament of Awesome. That's up against Fighting Fedor in Russia, which is the rigged judges.
Fabio Maldonado decision?
Yeah.
Oh, tough. You gotta go with the girl that ran the ropes, though.
The 6th seed is Kimbo versus Dede, which is one of the best fights ever, against unreported stab wounds. What is that?
Whoa, unreported stab wounds?
Yeah, I'm looking that up right now.
Although it's hard to beat Kimbo versus bless his soul. God rest in peace.
So unreported stab wounds is 2 fighters received indefinite medical suspensions in the aftermath of Bellator 170, including one fighter that was given a lengthy sentence due to unreported stab wounds.
Wow. I mean, that's bad, but think about it. The Kimbo versus Dede fight, one fighter nearly died after the fight, and that was Dede, and Kimbo died a while later. So if 2 fighters almost sacrificed their lives, you gotta vote for them.
The 3 seed is Everything About Mike Perry against Bruce Buffer lip syncing.
Oh, I saw Bruce Buffer lip syncing. It's a Vince McMahon moment. He blows out his knee doing it. It's fantastic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can see it. It's fantastic.
I'll vote for that. The Mike Perry thing, I don't care about. Like that, he's a racist. His corner's a racist, whatever. But yeah.
You should go back and watch some of these videos though that you missed out on.
These last 2 are good. Number 7 is Bjorn Rebney, labor leader, against UFC interim titles.
I'm going Bjorn Rebney.
Yeah.
Everything at Double M, Triple A related, I'm supporting.
I'm going Bjorn Rebney as well. And then the 2 verse 15 is the memo to the UFC employees where they said everything was fine and then fired everyone
it was sold
weeks
a few
later.
Weeks
against the TKO, the Flick getting stuck in the cage. That's Tournament of Awesome as well. In my mind.
Dude. Who was it? That was it? Masvidal?
Jake Ellenberger. Yeah, Ellenberger against Masvidal.
Yeah. Tough one.
No, I voted memo to UFC employees. People lost their job and stuff, and like the company lied to them. That's bad.
That is awful. I've even read that memo, and they say like, oh, news like that is damaging to the promotion and blah blah blah. And 3 weeks later, I think the UFC was sold. That is. Well, when I say I hate everything about MMA except the fights, that's the sort of stuff I'm referring to.
Yeah. So that's the MMA Tournament of Bad. Again, we will get Fagan on in the next week to talk about things a little bit more. But vote, and yeah, MMA is a dumb sport.
We broke down that tournament extensively, though.
We'll recap it every single week too. I promise you, because it's better than recapping these fights.
I agree.
And previewing these fights.
I also agree.
Let's end this podcast. This lasted way too long because of your Shogun Hua infatuation. We'll be back next week. I actually don't think we have anything to preview next week.
All right, so we'll talk plenty of MMA Tournament of Bad.
Well, that's why I'm hoping to have Fagan on next week to look at everything. So if we have something to preview, we'll get to it eventually, maybe. I don't know. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you right back here.
Inside the Octagon.
And on the podcast.